Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Hardcover Hearts, and this is a very auspicious day. This is the day that the BookTube Prize final decision is being announced. I'll put a link to that video. Please watch that first before you watch this. This is my contribution to that endeavor and effort, as I was a judge for 3 of the rounds this year in the BookTube Prize. But right now, let's talk about what the BookTube Prize is and what the books were that I read and needed to rank. And this is really my justification video, kind of talking you through my thinking of the prize, final decisions. What is the BookTube Prize? It is a prize given for both fiction and also nonfiction, and it's something that the bookish community on social media participates in. So that's including BookTube as well as Instagram and Twitter. So if you are interested, you can be a judge. I will put a link to Robert's videos. He runs the BookTube Prize, and you can kind of get more information there. But in a nutshell, what ends up happening is there's a big list that's pulled together at the beginning of the year of the books published in the last year. And from there, divisions are created, groups are created, no more than 6 books in each group, and the judges have 2 months to read all 6. From there, the judge has to stack rank what is the best book and what is the worst book. So in order, and the top 3 move forward once all of the rankings are pulled together for that grouping. And this continues until we arrive here today, where the announcement is going to be made. So as I mentioned, I'm here to justify my rankings and kind of talk you through how I thought about all of this. So with no more to be said on that, let's get started. So first thing I need to say is there's not a bad book here. As opposed to last year, where I had very strong feelings of what book I wanted to win. I would be okay if any of these books win, quite frankly. This is simply how I was thinking and my personal preferences, and I'll kind of talk through my biases and what I like in a book. Each of these are of skilled writers that put together a very compelling story, compelling characters, things that will resonate with you, things that will stay in your mind, different vantage points. I think this is a very strong final round here. The distance between each of these rankings is, in essence, infinitesimal. It is there, I would say maybe 5 and 6, there's maybe a gap between that and the top 4. The top 4 were what gave me a heartache. So let's get into it and I'll tell you all about them. I'm going to start at the bottom. So for me, the weakest of a very strong bunch, and I even hate even saying this because this is a great book. This is The Vanishing Half by Britt, Bennet. Now, I have read her previous work, The Mothers, and enjoyed it, but I thought what she did here in The Vanishing Half was a tremendous step forward in her writing. This is the story of twins. And in the spirit of Nella Larsen's passing, this tells the story of these 2 twins that grew up in a very self-enclosed community of former slaves that were incredibly light-skinned. And that became very important in this very small insular town. The 2 twins here did not want to live in that environment. They ended up leaving and running away, and in doing so, they start their new life in New Orleans. And one of them decides that she's going to leave. She leaves and she starts passing as white. And so we have this split of these 2 characters and their lives and the consequences of the decisions and the ways that they live moving forward. There's a lot about family here. There's a lot about legacy. There's a lot about bifurcation that's a theme that happens over and over and over again, and otherness and what you choose to acknowledge and what you choose to ignore. There's a really interesting trans character in here that I thought was well placed. There's a lot that happens in here. And I think that may be where it lost me a little bit, is that I felt that it was so tightly constructed and it was trying to say something so overtly that it lost a little bit of the magic for me. I could kind of predict a little bit of where things were going, and to me that lost a little bit of its luster. But again, as I said, this is a very good book, and I highly recommend it. If you have read passing or are interested in passing, the idea of someone who is so light-skinned that they start living as if they are white and not Black or of Black heritage. Yeah, good book, but of the lot, I put this one at number 6. Number 5. This one was a surprise for me. I talked about this in a previous rankings that I did. This came out of the blue. I didn't expect to like this, not nearly as much as I did. This is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. In this book, a young woman has to grapple with her own understanding of her history and her past when there's an accusation made from a former student to a man who was her teacher and who was also her former lover. And it's a psychological tale that starts to very, very, very slowly unravel her thinking and her ways of looking at herself as self-actualized and autonomous versus what was actually grooming, and what does grooming actually look like in slow motion, in nuanced subtleties. What is consent if you don't really understand what you're consenting to? This was a very slow and methodical look, starting with the announcement showing up on Twitter, and then this woman getting obsessed with why and really trying to target this other woman as being unfair and not and untrue, and this is a lie, and this didn't happen. And then slowly going back and revisiting her history and her memories of what she thought, as I mentioned, was a true relationship. I think this was an important book. I think it was really painful. It was really hard to read, but it said so much. It just was very, very slowly paced out. And I could see how this would be not for everyone. And I think in the ultimate rankings of where this landed, I think it's a very good book. I rated it very highly. I think people should read it, but it wasn't as good as some of the others. So for that, it's number 5. Let's go to number 4. This was the first book that I have read from this author. This is The Death of Vivek Ogee by Akwaeke Emezi. I had problems where I was going to put this book because I loved this book. I thought this book was so poignant, so lyrical, had so much otherworldliness, so much self-possession and force to it. A son's body has been left on the porch of their parents' home. And the body has been beaten and has just been left there, to which no one really knows what happened to Vivek Ogee. And so you open with that, it's in the title, The Death of Vivek Ogee. And what we get in this is the story of transformation, and is the story of this beautiful, youthful desire to be one's true self, and the arrogance and ignorance that comes with living in your true calling in a world that is not ready to accept you. But yet, all the ways that you can find love, and you can find acceptance, and you can find family, and you can find people who care about you. But the danger of that and the pain of of staying only true to yourself in the quiet, with your family, with people who are accepting of you when others don't, including your own family. So this is about trans youth. It's about this transformation and about wanting to live authentically and joyously. And I think I love how it's a very short book. There's a lot of power kind of woven through here. And all of these other people's experiences with Vivek, and how these experiences with Vivek kind of change them and make them feel a little question themselves and the world, and who are they protecting once Vivek dies, by not acknowledging who Vivek really was. I thought this was tender, as I mentioned. It's lyrical, it's beautiful, and it should be read. But I love the top three more. So with that, let me go to those. So if anybody's watched this channel, they know how much I love this next book. Number 3, Hamnet. This is by Maggie O'Farrell. This is a tremendously gorgeous book. This is the story of Shakespeare's wife, Agnes, and her life and her family, and how she basically takes care of the family as William Shakespeare has become the celebrated playwright and author and has left and gone to London. This is about her as an interesting, compassionate, caring person who the community comes to. She is an herbalist and she takes care of people, and she has a lot of love to share, and is equally in her own right an interesting character. And about the death of their son and the impacts that has on her and the family. What makes this book unique and beautiful could also be what people don't like about it, which is its lyricism and its high drama. There's high dramatics. There are very sweeping cinematic scenes. It's also great as a historical fiction. There's a lot here, but it is this elevated, very high drama type of rendering. I still think about so many scenes in this book. I can see them in my mind's eye. Her writing was interesting and beautiful, and evoked a lot of emotion from me. And so I absolutely loved it. And it was really hard for me to put this as number 3. So the final 2, how did I divvy up 2 amazing books? Let me just tell you what I put in the second place. I put Shaggy Bane by Douglas Stuart in second. This book is about a young boy and his family. A lot of family stories here. This is a young boy and his family living in extreme poverty and extreme neglect. He is a young gay man who is just saucy and funny and wears his heart on the sleeve and doesn't always realize when he kind of stumbles into things and just is his authentic self, and all the ways that gets him into trouble. This book made me laugh, but there's also so much pathos and so much dysfunction at the heart of this. It's beautiful. There's a lot of tragedy. The writing is exquisite. I think this was a great book. I understand why it won the Booker Prize. I enjoyed it so much, and it left me, just like with Hamlet, there's so many images in my head, so many scenes that I'll never forget. But it didn't touch me in the same way that number 1 did. And that book is The Prettiest Star by Sickles. Oh, this This book had everything that I loved about some of the other stories in one. This is the story of, set in the 1980s at the height of the AIDS crisis. And this is a time period that I lived in, that I lived through, and it still has left a very, very strong impression on me. And I have emotional scars from all of the people that I love that I have lost. So Brian's very young. He's in his early 20s. At 18, he left Ohio, the small little insular homophobic town in Ohio, and he made it to New York. And he was able to live out and proud as a gay man, and he found the love of his life. He had friends, he had vibrancy, he was like living his fullest expression of himself. And then the AIDS crisis hit and took his liver. And also infected him. He has seen the trajectory of what's going to happen with this disease, and he knows that he's going to die. And he doesn't want to die in New York. He wants to come home to his family. This puts his family in a very precarious state. His father has not acknowledged his homosexuality. His mother is kind of caught in between and wants to love him and wants to take care of him, but is also embarrassed because the town does not approve and everyone's afraid. What does it mean for him to come and have this disease in their home? Will they get it? Will it spread? And then it's his sister, his younger sister, who always looked up to him, but really doesn't know him. All of a sudden he's coming back, and how that impacts and affects her in this town, because everyone knows now. Everybody knows that he's home and he's sick and there's something wrong. And then we have the grandmother, the doting, loving grandmother who will fight for her family and fight her family for what's right, and steps in to really be the person who loves him most truly and honestly, and her feelings of watching her grandson have to deal with all this and the disappointment she has in her family for not stepping up and doing what's right. This book had so much in it. It really took me back to those days. The emotions are front and center, but it's not amped. It's not hyped. It's a story told honestly, and it lands and it has an impact. For me, I thought this book was one of the best books that I have read and deserved to be number one. I have not yet watched the BookTube Prize Finals, so you'll have to tell me, what did you think about the ones that won? What do you think about my rankings and ratings? I look forward to next year, where there's going to be the introduction of the works in translation, which I'm so excited about. And so I would really encourage you, if this excites you, please consider being a judge. It's not that overwhelming if you are a book reader. And if you could read 6 books in 2 months and then thoughtfully figure out how to rank them against each other, I would highly encourage you to take part. It's been a complete joy, and I want to thank Robert from Barter Hordes for creating this and letting me participate, and thank you all for your time today.